Hi there and welcome to the channel of A Disappointed Man with me, Jason Kennedy, the Disappointed Man, and I'm also the very hot man tonight because the humid weather has really come to Taiwan. It's kind of unbearable, so if I look like I'm melting, that is the reason. But I wanted to put my latest review, and it's of this, Francis Hodgson Burnett's The Secret Garden from 1911. Now, I've already reviewed one novel from 1911 on the channel, and that was Conrad's Under Western Eyes. So back then, in that year, a person could have gone into their circulating library or their W.H. Smith and chosen between these two new books. Kind of fascinating, right? Something for myself to read by the fireside, or something to relate to the children before they go to bed. Is it going to be my pleasure or their pleasure or both? So I'm not going to go through the story of The Secret Garden because there's been so many TV and movie adaptations, and many people have already read this book or had it read to them. And for those who haven't read it, I would not wish to spoil it because there is some magic here after all. But what I'll make are some broader points about the interest of this book, and the first would be about how it taps into a number of genres to accomplish its task, and the first of those is colonialism. So the opening of the book is in India, and the heroine of the story, Mary, we find her alone in a house after her parents and all the servants have perished in a cholera outbreak. I think it's on page 2. Rather tragic. And then she's transported to the Yorkshire moors. And what this means is you have a character who's English but not English, Indian but not Indian, and it does form a point of comparison, not just for Mary but for other characters too. And the Indian imaginary is very much present despite the setting being the Yorkshire moors. So we have stuff about elephants, camels, tigers. One of the characters is repeatedly compared to a Raja, and there are snake charmers. There are numerous mentions of snake charmers. And Mary carries a kind of tint of otherness, of Indianness, which has to be removed to signify her reformation, her becoming a good girl, and that is a little overplayed and uncomfortable. And even 130 pages into the narrative, a character observes that you're not as yellow as you used to be. This yellowness marks Mary as not yet being the healthy child. So that's interesting, and making it more interesting is how much direct experience of India did Burnett have to draw upon? 0. I don't think she went nearer India than Manchester. So it's probably all been cribbed from Kipling, other texts. And then the second one would be the Gothic. She draws on the Gothic for this, and it's rather like Jane Eyre in certain respects. However, this is the Gothic light with nothing really to truly scare you. It's just a general spookiness until one of the key mysteries is revealed. It's a little like Northanger Abbey in a way, that it seems to be something perhaps supernatural, and then it has a perfectly mundane, banal explanation. But of course, it's a children's book, and so they could never have the intention to make it too scary. Little children have to go to sleep after a chapter or two of this, and so that would be the reason. But that's interesting. And then the next part would be the Romanticism here. So the Romanticism is the figure of the father, the grieving father, and he has this moment, this encounter with the romantic sublime high up in the Alps, when he just falls to his knees alone and kind of heaves up all the remainder of his grief and wonders if now isn't the moment to kind of turn the page on all this pain and unhappiness and begin a new life. So those aspects are there. And then the last part is the way it uses dialect which is also really interesting, connects it with other kinds of writers that I'm really into. It doesn't do it in as deep a way, but it is integral to the way the story is told. And just as Mary has to lose her Indianness, her embrace of the Yorkshire dialect signifies her coming closer and closer to the common people, but also, crucially, to the land. After all, this is a story about a garden, but Yorkshire itself is a garden in this story. And I found, I'm not going to try and reproduce the way it sounds, but I found it interesting to see that link with stories, writers like Walter Scott and Zora Neale Hurston, who I'm going to speak about in a future review, to see it in a children's book, and working in very much the same way. The broader the dialect, the closer the person's connection is to that landscape, to that place. It's quite precious in that respect. And then the last part is just a very strange feature of The Secret Garden that I don't think anyone's really remarked upon, and that is that Colin bears a striking resemblance to Denton Welsh. Of course, the timeline makes it impossible, because Denton Welsh would be what? He would be not even born when this book is written. But his bedroom resembles Denton Welsh's bedroom, which had a tapestry cartoon in there, and Colin's bedroom has tapestries too, and lots of beautiful things, just like Welsh's did. He, instead of Welsh, who is a person who's crippled but thinks he isn't, or doesn't believe that he can't live this normal life, Colin is someone who's not crippled but believes that he is. And both of them have this strain of Christian Science circulating around them. So The Secret Garden contains this Christian Science idea that if you think healthy thoughts, you'll be healthy, the power of positive thinking, and that this may even overcome significant health issues. Yeah, that's the very strong form of Christian Science. And Welsh had a Christian Science link with his mother and his mother's circle. So when Welsh has been cut in half after an automobile accident, what do you need by your bedside but two Christian scientists singing their songs and praying their prayers, and basically pushing the idea that if you'll only think the right thoughts, you'll get up and walk, despite your legs being mangled and your spine being fragmented. Yes. So I thought that was interesting. So anyone that knows Denton Welsh, see what you make of the Colin character. Now my last bit would be to wrap up on my kind of judgment of this work. And what I'd say is it brings out something that you do find in literary studies, if we can just sort of go into the study part for a second, forgive me. And that is that there are some approaches to studying literary texts where you don't worry about who wrote them, where the personality or the life circumstances of the person that wrote the text are immaterial to the way you would approach it, because you will just link it with other texts that came later, texts that came before, right? Intertextual references, and you'll be able to establish these themes and to see how they're developing from work to work. And this is very much that, as I pointed out with the colonialism, the Gothic, the Romanticism, and this kind of use of dialect. Each one of those will connect it with all kinds of other texts, and that is really how I would gather the interest out of reading The Secret Garden. Nothing here makes you want to know what Burnett was like, what she spread on her toast, where she went on holiday, how many children she had, whether she felt more at home in the Swiss Alps or on the, I don't know, the desert plains, wherever. It just doesn't matter. Whereas other writers, when you read their work, you have to know something about them, or you need to know. You feel that there's something there that did not come before them, right? you read a Kafka story, you think, huh? This is a man who brought something into the world of letters that wasn't there previously, or was kind of latent or lying dormant, and they really took it and shaped it and made it into something so imposing and arresting that you wonder why. You feel that there is some powerful motivation at work that you would like uncovered, and that is all this kind of historicist criticism, which will not only try and recreate like the original audience's reception of a work, but it does believe that there is some way in which the life of an artist can illuminate the work they produced. But this one is not that. It's a hack job. It's really very formulaic, but the interesting thing is it's brilliant in the way it executes its plan, and the elements are so perfectly balanced. Now, in many works, they'll tell you to look for like characters that are doubles of one another. You often see the doubling. And the way the triangle works in this book with Colin, Dickon, and Mary is really perfect. Colin is dominant over people. He has the political authority as the Raja in the house. Dickon is a pan figure who has dominance, although he doesn't dominate. He lives in harmony with nature, but not having that power over people. So they're at kind of opposites. Mary is trying to tame the kind of tyrannical impulses of Colin and make him a more kind of benevolent despot, if you will. And she is also trying to follow Dickon into a closer relationship with nature. So that is just that triangle. And then you've got Mary's mother, who is absent and was frivolous and cared more about her appearance and parties. Her double is Mrs. Sowerby, who has about 12 children. She can't count them all. She's like that old lady who lived in a shoe. And she is the absolute opposite. All of her life, all of her joy is living through her children and celebrating them. She's so selfless and nurturing. So there is the opposite. And then you have Colin and his father have this relationship too, of the antagonism between them, which must be resolved. So you see all the oppositions, the relationships here, the way the elements work together, that is what elevates this. Even though I say dismissively it's hack work, the patterning is exceptional. That's why this book has retained its appeal for more than a century, I believe. And for anyone who's really interested in how narratives work, it's really a, dare I say it, textbook example. So it did speak to me in terms of like the scholarly side of it, as well as the actual story itself being enjoyable. And I did find the its magic did grip me. There were like a couple of scenes where I'm going to say it, I was almost moved to tears by it, because actually the kind of pain of being an orphan which Mary has is put into the shade by what's happened to Colin. He's been rejected by a father who's very much alive, but makes himself deliberately absent because of his grief, and Colin feels that he's being blamed for his mother's death somehow. And actually Colin's pain is so much greater than anything that Mary suffered, that it really does reach out and touch you if you just think about the predicament of that boy and just the reason why he's locked himself away. That was the most moving part of it. A century later, that still really connected with me. So, a very worthwhile book. It might surprise you that I'm reviewing a children's book with so much seriousness, but as I've got older, I really do appreciate children's literature even more, and I've got a bunch more of them that I'd like to talk about. But please, leave your thoughts in the comments. I really love reading the comments. Nothing really makes me happier than that. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And I'm going to wrap up now by repeating my mantra. Be safe, be strong, try to be cool, cooler than me, and Until the next time, I'm just going to say this. Nanu nanu.